Most of us close out a quarter the exact same way we close out a really long work day. We're tired, we're ready to move on, and we tell ourselves we'll reflect later. And later never comes. And so we go right into the next quarter carrying everything we didn't learn from the last one. Whether it's the same patterns, the same things that drains us, the same burnout triggers, and we oftentimes wonder why we keep ending up in the same place. I used to be the queen of setting quarterly goals and then completely forgetting to check in on them. That is not a strategy. It's a wishful thinking wrapped up in a Notion template. And you cannot course correct if you never stop to check the compass. Today, we're going to do the quarterly review together. I'm going to show you exactly how I use it to close a quarter with clarity instead of chaos. Now, this one is going to be super practical, so let's get into it. Now, last week, we talked about strategy as a filter. What to say yes to and what to protect your season from. This week, we're going to go a little bit deeper on how do you actually know if the strategy is working. And that's what the quarterly review is going for. A lot of us end our days, our weeks, and our quarters the same way. We do not reflect, we do not check in to see what is working and what is not working. But listen, I used to be the queen of setting quarterly goals and then completely forgetting to check in on them and to see the progress. And I know this is a reality for a lot of us as business owners and a lot of us as creators because there's so much going on in our world every single day. So sometimes I would literally spend like a Sunday afternoon mapping out the entire quarter. And so I would have my Notion board up, my intentions, my matrix, the whole 9 yards. And then we will find April roll around, and I never open back that Notion board. And I used to feel some type of way because maybe I would have hit one out of the 10 things I may have written or one out of the five things. And instead of actually looking at why, I just archive that board and I would open a new one. And here I go again, repeating the same practice of planning the second quarter and never understanding why I was never successful in the first quarter. Success may look different for everyone. Success might revolve around one goal for one person. It might be a series or a set of goals. And let's be honest, that is not a strategy. It's a wishful thinking wrapped up in a Notion template. The problem I had personally is that I had no rhythm for reviewing. There is no rhythm to review, there is no rhythm to reset, and there isn't a rhythm to reflect. I was treating my business like a one-way street. Always forward, never pausing to look at what was actually in the rear view. And it's okay to look in the rear view from time to time. And so I kept making the same decisions, chasing the same things that weren't moving the needle. And every quarter I would feel that frustration because I'm wondering why growth felt so slow. And I can remember there was a point where I saw a shift when I started to treat my quarterly review not as a place to just check in or make it a non negotiable or a place for me to judge myself, but a check in point or a data collection point because that's all it really is. When you're doing these 90-day or 6 days check in. It's just information that you have collect along the way. And so that information is how you're going to steer forward into the next quarter or the next week or the next month. So I do believe that most of us as creators really need to fine tune our quarterly reviews because a lot of us think that quarterly reviews are very corporate. When I was in corporate and managing an IT department, The Lord knows I hated quarterly reviews and year end reviews. But now, being a creator and somebody who's doing it solo and running a whole business, I now understand the importance of having that quarterly review. And a lot of times, the things that we dislike in corporate, we always revolve back to it. And so now I'm not just saying, oh, or dreading quarterly reviews. I actually look forward to those quarterly reviews because one, I don't have a PowerPoint deck on a board and KPIs that nobody actually understands or people are sleeping on. But one of the things I want you to kind of shift your perspective on when it comes to quarterly reviews is that it is not a performance evaluation. It's a course correction tool. And you cannot course correct if you never stop to check the compass. The creator who pauses every 90 days to ask what worked, what drained me, what do I need to let go of, that creator is building a compounding momentum. You are not just being busy, you are building. The one who skips it just keeps going, and that is what is going to lead to burnout and frustration. But also, it makes you think that you're not moving forward and you're not doing what you need to be get done inside of your business. And oftentimes we think that we are going in the wrong direction, or sometimes we do be running in the wrong direction. And listen, that quarterly check-in is going to be so important. I was reading up an article the other day where a marketing strategist was talking about having a quarterly content strategy check-in. And I was like, let me read about this because as a creator, I'm always looking for new ways to do things and looking at what formats move people along towards their goals, what formats just produce noise. And it got me to thinking the same principle applies to everything in your creative business. The review is how you separate forward movement from noise. It's how you get smarter every 90 days instead of just feeling tired. All right, so let me walk you through what I call the 90-day flow review, right? And so, you can do this in a journal. You can use Apple Journal. You can do it on a Notion page. You can do a voice memo, whatever works for you. But here is the thing I want you to remember. I don't want you to take hours to do this review. All right. Honestly, for most of us, 4 to 5 minutes is enough time if you want to be honest with yourself. Okay. Do not spend more than 4 to 5 minutes doing this. And so when I'm doing my review and I'm looking at my Notion board and I'm looking at the analytics on the back end, I think one of the most common trends for me is what actually happened, not based on what I've put on my content calendar or what I've planned, but what actually happened within those 90 days. And this is going to be so important because on my YouTube channel, Elisha Naomi, I did go through a series called the 12-week year planning using the Apple tools. And inside of that series, there was a time where every single week inside of Apple Journal, you have to document what worked, what didn't work, and all the things. And so this is where it gives you an opportunity to pull up your calendar, pull out your content output, your revenue numbers, your analytics, or whatever data you have, and just describe the quarter as it is, right? Or as it was, not as you wanted it to be. And celebrate what you have done in that quarter. And so this question is really not to judge you, it's about honesty. You can't review what you refuse to look at. Write down your three biggest wins. Even the small ones count. Write those three things down that just did not go the way you expected. Not a commentary, just the facts. Okay. And so when you're doing these reviews, I'm looking at everything. I'm seeing what happened. What took me 5 hours, something that takes me usually 2 hours, it took me 5 hours in a given week. What actually happened? And so it leads me into like another part of reviewing that information and understanding where did my energy actually go. I am a morning person, okay? I do not function after 12 p.m. And so I have structured my business and creating content around my most energetic time, which is in the morning period. And my calendar reflects it. If I find that certain things, certain creative work is being done in the afternoon within those 90 days, I'm trying to answer the question, why was this happening? Because your calendar and your energy are two very different things. You might have been technically working on something all quarter, but if it drained you every single time you sit down to do it, that is going to be important information for you, because that is your body telling you something is fundamentally wrong. And so I'm asking myself this question: what energized me this quarter? What depleted me? And so I have found, like, if I'm going, I did a quarterly review for the first quarter of this year, and there was one particular task that drained me every single week and depleted me every week. And I had this conversation with my husband. I was like, now that I'm doing two videos, I'm finding that I'm becoming a little more tired, because not only I know there is a period for batching content, but also it's a lot of editing now going in. And I'm like, babe, I need to outsource editing now, because it's depleting me. And the only way I was able to identify what is depleting me and what is draining my energy is because I can look at the calendar and see what I'm spending more time on. And this is the thing that most people skip across. What did I spend the most time on that produced either nothing or it produced the same output? Yes, but I had to put in more hours when I'm trying to come down to a 4 hour work week. Okay. And doing it solo. And so this is a question I want you to ask yourself as you're doing this review, like, what energized you that quarter, what depleted you, and just don't skip over it. Understand it, be real about it, and understand the type of work that you're doing, if it's right for this season or if you have to put it on pause so you can focus in on what really matters. Because here is the thing that I think a lot of us don't understand is that your energy is your most limited resource. Yes, time, and it plays into time management and all the things, but where it went this quarter tells you everything about what to protect next quarter. And so if you're always feeling drained, if you're being depleted and you're not having the same output as the previous quarter, it is a time to evaluate and really ask yourself different questions. Now, the other thing that I'm looking at when it comes to viewing all these dashboards that I've created and looking at my calendar and doing this review is that, did my actions match my stated priorities? For me, accountability is so important. And it's also one of the most uncomfortable things creators have to deal with when it comes to accountability. Look at what you said your priority was at the start of the quarter, whether it was one goal or you had three top priorities for that quarter. Then look at where your time and attention actually went. And if they match, then yeah, you're on the right track. But if they don't match, be honest with yourself, because most of the time they really don't be matching up. All right. And take it from me. Some days I have to be like, that doesn't match my priority, because we are in a space where it's very noisy and we can become easily distracted. And That easily distracted mode is not your fault. It's not something that you can say, oh, I'm not disciplined enough. But life be lifing. Life fills a space where strategy doesn't. And if there's a gap between what you said mattered and what you actually did, that gap is your agenda for the next quarter. And it's not a reason to feel guilty about it. It is an agenda. Now, another thing in the review, and you hear me say this time and time again on the podcast, is that data tells me what to keep, what to stop, and what to start. All right. Let your numbers have a seat at the table. I remember 3 years ago, a book was recommended to me, Managing by the Numbers. Let me pull up the exact thing. A commonplace guide to understanding and using your company's financial. A lot of the core principles of that book, I applied it to how I view quarterly reviews or monthly reviews and dealing with my analytics. I know the book was really focused around finances for business, but I do believe that those core principles in that book was so helpful because it helped me to understand how larger organizations really manage and plan effectively for the next quarter using the numbers. And that is why I said that let your numbers have a seat at the table. So, some of the things that I look for on a quarterly basis is like what content performed, what didn't, what resonated with my audience, what got crickets or did really low in numbers. And listen, even if a video got 200 views, I still count that as a win because I can remember when I just used to get 12 views. Okay. And so I'm looking at all of this. What tools I use in that quarter to help me get my content published, help me to support my clients. And I'm looking to see how I design them, what is too much, and I can take away extra steps. And I'm looking at the entire picture from a number perspective. Now, I am not saying you should let data override your intuition or your calling, but data is a form of feedback and feedback is sacred. It tells you what's actually landing with the people you are trying to serve. And let us be honest as business owners, or the reason why you're creating content. Keep what's working, stop what isn't, or at least put it in the later season. And ask yourself if there's something you've been meaning to start that this quarter's results are now giving you permission to try. Based on the numbers and all the data that we are reviewing and all the information that we're reviewing, now I need to set up the next quarter and what success will look like in that next quarter. And a lot of times, this particular part gets me, and I have to maybe step away from the data maybe a day or for a couple hours because the review becomes the strategy, if that makes sense. A quarterly review without a bridge into the next quarter, you are just journaling or making notes. And yes, I do love my journal, don't get me wrong, but strategy requires a forward step. So here's what I have been doing recently. I write down about one or two things that if I did them in the first 2 weeks of the next quarter, that will create that momentum for me for the rest of the quarter. That is going to be my priority list. It is not a to-do list. It is a priority list, and everything exists around that specific priority. And there is a difference. Now, a lot of times, one of the things that I found very funny when it comes to doing quarterly reviews is that there is a version of the quarterly review that feels like standing in front of a judge. It's like I'm judging my own self. And I don't know if anybody can resonate with this. Like you have to defend what you did with your time, your resources, and your calling. And I want to offer you a different mindset with regards to it. And it's quite funny because I think I was talking with a friend the other day, and I was like, this scripture came to mind, Lamentations chapter 3, verse 40, when it says, let us examine our ways and test them, and let us return to the Lord. Examine, test, return. That right there is the rhythm for every single system, every flow, your daily workflows. That is what you're doing. You examine, you test, you return. You examine, you test, you return. That's what a quarterly review really is. It is an examination, not a condemnation. It is a testing. It is not failing, and it always ends with a return to the purpose, a return to the goal, a return to what actually matters. God doesn't ask us to be perfect strategists in our business. He asks us to be faithful stewards. He is the perfect strategist. He is the perfect curator. He is the perfect visionary. All he requires of us in our everyday seasons, our everyday life, is to be faithful stewards. And stewardship includes looking honestly at what we have been given, what we have done with it, and what we are going to do differently moving forward. The review is an act of stewardship. So give yourself the grace to look honestly, and then give yourself the grace to move forward with what you find. All right. So as we move into the new week and the new month and all the things, and we get deeper into the new quarter, what's one thing from this past quarter that you have been avoiding to look at? And what might it tell you if you actually did? Now, here's the thing, 90 days is enough time to build something meaningful. I remember last year, I said at the top of 2025, January, when I started to really get serious with my YouTube channel, I said, I need to give YouTube 90 days. I want to see what the data is. And so I didn't have to be perfect. I didn't have strategy. I didn't have all the knowledge that I'm sharing with you guys now. I didn't have it back then. But I had a purpose, and I was like, yeah. 90 days. I just give me 90 days. I need to get the data because I'm analytical. I'm visual, but also analytical. And so I just needed the data. And so 90 days is enough time to build something meaningful. It's also enough time to drift. And the review is how you tell the difference. The one thing I would like you to do right now or for this coming week is to spend about 4 to 5 minutes looking back at your last 30 days, looking back at your last 60 days or 90 days, and kind of just pinpointing what worked, what didn't, what drained me, what energized me, what was my most productive day, what did I do different than what I did last year or the previous 30 days. Ask yourself these questions and really be honest with them. And you're going to see trends appearing, you're going to see patterns appearing, and based on those patterns and trends, if it's something that is giving you success, keep doing that, keep improving it. If it's something that keeps draining you, let it go. Next week we are staying in the Strategy She Builds series, and we're going into something I know y'all have been thinking about: content strategy. Content strategy is one of the biggest things, even for content creators who's seeing success with their content. They'll always be talking about content strategy. And I want to share a little about how I plan my content and what does content strategy mean to me, because I have a different perspective about it. Because when it comes to my content, I don't want to be burnt out. I've been burnt out. And there is a difference between a content strategy that looks good in Notion or on paper, and that one that is actually sustainable. And so episode 47 is going to be that conversation. So I don't want you to miss it. Please leave a review on the podcast. If you're on the YouTube channel, please let me know in the comments down below how this episode and how the Creative Flow podcast has been helping you or resonating with you. And please share out the episode if you have that creator friend who needs to hear this. As always, I'm Elisha, and this is how we create a flow.